There we go. All right, guys. Obviously, you guys are here to learn about some game design, talk about it. So I'm going to start with why video games. I'm sure most of you are already convinced about video games, so I don't really need to spend too much time on that. I'm going to talk about some game design principles, some techniques. Game design is an iterative process, and then I'm going to give you guys some examples. So, first of all, I'm Brett Pennings. Nice to meet you guys. I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Went to Calvin College. I work here now. That gets really choppy. Co-founder of Bowl Cut Studios, which is at this point still a fictitious company because I haven't got the LLC application back yet. And I'm working on a game called Mage Quit with my brother. I've been working on that for actually probably over a year now. So yeah, let's get started. So why video games? Okay, so there's a lot of people that don't play video games. There's a lot of people that do. But I think it's safe to say that most people watch movies, right? A vast majority of people can appreciate a film, okay? So I'm going to start by talking about the fourth wall, which is the invisible wall between the stage and the audience. So in films, you kind of just expect that to be there. I mean, it's when it's not there, it's pretty unsettling. Like if you've ever watched House of Cards, and then Frank Underwood turns and looks at you for the first time, and you're like, that shouldn't happen. I mean, I still think it shouldn't happen, but and then there's other things like The Office where they talk to a fake videographer who's essentially you, but you don't feel unsettled about it. But in video games, you don't have that. I mean, you're assimilating the character in the game, and there's no fourth wall for the most part. So pros of the missing wall is that you have a more immersive experience because you're actually in the medium instead of just observing it. Which opens up a wider spectrum of emotions. I mean, if you think about it, when you're observing something, you can't necessarily, I mean, you sort of can, but when that wall is not there, you can feel the emotions at a more personal level. So you can experience guilt or pride, weakness or mastery, depending on how good or bad you are at the game you're playing. And then for multiplayer games, you can feel a sense of rivalry or camaraderie if it's a cooperative game. Cons of a missing wall. When you create something like a film that people can observe, they're more or less experiencing the same thing when they observe it. With a video game, you don't have that singular experience necessarily, but you need to try to design for it. This in turn makes your game less accessible than any film that somebody would watch. I mean, you have people that don't play games to begin with. You have people that won't play the platform that your game's on. You have people that won't like the genre that your game is. And then you have people that are bad at your game. All those people are not going to like your game or even know about your game. And then you have a small subset of people that will actually play your game and like it, which is kind of depressing, but that's why you guys are here. So, and then there's also griefing, which you guys probably all know is when you have a multiplayer game and people just intentionally be jerks for the sake of doing it because they derive some joy from it. So that's hard to design against in a multiplayer game because you can't. People are always going to be dicks, basically. Okay, so any game design book you'll ever read will always start with defining what a game is. I think it's kind of corny, but I'm going to do it anyway. So there's a book called A Theory of Fun by Raph Koster. It's pretty goofy, like it's a quick read, but he brings up an interesting point that fun is your brain's way of rewarding you for learning. So, I mean, if you think about it, you're like, that doesn't sound right. That's probably not right. Teachers would always say, learning's fun, but fun is actually learning. It's the other way around. Games, he also talks about games as being puzzles. That's his definition of what a game is. And the reason that games are fun is because they're easily digestible for your brain, so your brain feels like it's learning, and it rewards itself for doing that. So now that we've defined games, let's talk about who they're for. Know your audience. Arrowhead Games, if anyone's ever played Helldivers or, let's see, what else have they made? They've made a few popular ones. Their quote is, "A game for everyone is a game for no one," which is pretty true. A lot of people have a wide variety of tastes, and you can't make something that everyone will like. So the game that you are making, you're probably making it because you want to play it. But you should also be thinking about who else would like this. And as mentioned in the previous slide, games, fun is the act of learning something new, right? So should maybe investigate different types of thought. So it's a book I read recently called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. If anyone's read it, if anyone hasn't read it, I recommend reading it. It's not really about game design, but it's about just general design. And he talks about 3 different types of thought. You have reflective thought, behavioral thought, and visceral thought. Visceral thought is I mean, it's not really even thought, it's almost more of an emotion. When you touch something, how does it make you feel? It's your first impressions upon seeing anything. That would be your visceral reaction. So in a game, that's your game aesthetics, your game feel. If anyone's played Overwatch, you'll know that just running around in the game and using your different abilities in the game, you can tell it's got a good game feel to it. And that's kind of a good visceral example. Behavioral is more, if any of you guys are good at sports or bad at sports, it's because you haven't, if you're bad at sports, it's because you haven't practiced enough to get to the point where your behavioral mind has grasped the concept of, kicking a ball into a net or whatever, right? So behavioral games, a good example would be Call of Duty, where you don't really think when you're playing, you just kind of run around and there's a guy, shoot him. It's about your eyes just passing through to your hands and you just reacting. Some people like that type of game. I personally prefer reflective games that require you to think through what you need to do. So turn-based strategy are kind of my favorite. So games like StarCraft or Fire Emblem would be good examples of games that use reflective thought heavily. So now there's different types of play as well. I got these from another game design book, Introduction to Game Design, Prototyping, and Development by Jeremy Gibson. So he talks about 4 different kinds of play. You have your competitive play, which is pretty straightforward. Chance-based play, like gambling. Some people who don't like gambling recognize the fact that they have no influence over what happens, so why would they bother doing it? I don't know. I don't like gambling, so I don't really understand it. And then vertiginous play. I don't know how to say that. That's basically like you make yourself dizzy, or kind of scare yourself into being excited about something. That's pretty hard to obtain in games, but I would also say that with the rise of VR, that's coming back, I think, that's available for the first time in games, really, that you can make somebody dizzy in a game for the sake of excitement. And then mimicry, which you would think, only kids really play with action figures, but really any game you play, you're assimilating the character, so you're pretty much mimicking. Like every game is mimicry when you have a character that you're playing. So that's kind of an interesting thing there. Okay, so let's talk about mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics. Some of you guys have probably already heard of these terms. Mechanics are essentially how your game is programmed to work. Just it's kind of like at the level of code, like what you push A, your guy jumps. Like that's a mechanic, right? A dynamic is the actual act of people playing your game, interacting with the mechanics, and responding to it. And then aesthetics is the pretty layer on top that ties everything together and makes it look pretty, right? Okay, so as a designer, when you're approaching a game, you program the mechanics, and then the last thing you should really be thinking about is your aesthetics, right? The mechanics are going to be the thing that keep people coming back to play your game. The aesthetics are going to give them kind of that initial curb appeal to your game, and eventually through the dynamics, they'll realize what the mechanics of the game are, and they'll either get bored or stay engaged. So yeah, from a player perspective, they see aesthetics, dynamics, and then mechanics. All right. The elemental tetrad. This is also from one of the books I talked about earlier. This is actually a pretty common. It's the idea that games are broken up into 4 parts. You have your mechanics, aesthetics, technology, and story. The technology is the least visible thing of these 4 parts. The aesthetics is the most visible, and then you kind of have your story and mechanics in the middle. I would argue that story is optional in a lot of games. Some games kind of just shoehorn it in at the end and say, hey, these pigs took our eggs, let's go blow them up with... Huh? I was talking about Angry Birds.
There's no story in the game.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they have a little, yeah. But I would say those are really well done, though. I was referring to Angry Birds, where you see a little cut screen. They're like, this is why the birds are mad. You're like, okay, whatever. Anyway, so good games have fun aesthetics. You want your fun mechanics. You want your aesthetics to be coherent. People would stop playing your game if they're like, these things don't go together. Why? I don't have a good example of that, but coherent aesthetics are good, but also obviously pretty aesthetics as well. Technology, the job of your technology is to be accessible. As I said earlier, a lot of people won't play your game because it might only be on one platform, right? So it goes without saying, more platforms, more accessible. That's how you maximize technology. And then your story, I think the best stories, I'm going to use The Last of Us as an example. Good stories are introspective. They make you examine things about yourself that you didn't realize. In that game, it kind of, if anyone's played it, it kind of, it makes you question like the morality of, what's the word? Kind of like doing something for the greater good. If you know, I don't want to give away the ending, so because you guys should probably all play it. It's a really good game. So yeah, that's good stories are introspective and they make you learn something about yourself or learn something that you hadn't thought of. Okay, game design is an iterative process. When you're first starting with a game, you should identify what you want the core mechanic of your game to be. So for Mage Quit, for me, the core mechanic is throwing fireballs at each other to knock each other into lava and just kill each other, basically. So you start with a really basic version of that. So in my case, it was, I think I started out with a sphere that shoots a sphere at another sphere to try to knock it away, and just to test the mechanics to see if it'd be fun, and then I slowly would add things to it, right? So you start with your core mechanic, you implement it, and then test it right away. See what's fun, what's good, what works, what doesn't work, and then go back and analyze what worked, what didn't work. Then redesign a solution to fix what didn't work, or to accentuate what did, and then repeat, obviously. Okay. Game feel. I'm going to quickly talk about this. So it's a largely intangible aspect of a game that makes it feel good to play, and that's a pretty general definition. It's not really even a definition. It says it's not really a thing. It just feels good. So in most cases, when people are talking about good game feel, they're referring to responsive controls. When you move your character, when you move your joystick, the character moves kind of one-to-one. If you have bad game feel in your game, people can easily blame the game for why they do bad at it. People always want to look for, when they're doing well at a game, it's because they're good at it, and when they're doing bad at it, it's because the game sucks or the controller's wrong or, stuff like that. So if you have good game feel, it increases the kind of the immersion aspect of your game. So, as we talked about earlier, the singular experience from watching a film, you don't want people to experience a film, but you want people to all enjoy your game, whoever's going to be playing it, right? So, how do you do this? There's a thing called flow. Flow is actually used, I think, in most game design books, and it's the idea that you keep the player in a state between boredom and frustration throughout the duration of them playing. So a good easy way to do this is to turn your game into a multiplayer game, assuming that the people playing against each other are of similar skill levels. Obviously that gets out of hand when one person is way better. He gets bored because he's too good. The other guy gets frustrated because they're too bad. And then you have other things like a feedback system, like in Left 4 Dead, where as you play through the game, if it detects that you're doing poorly, it doesn't challenge you as much. And if it detects that you're doing really well, it'll throw more zombies at you. So then skill gap reconciliation is the idea that, I actually made this term up, but it's the idea that not everyone's going to be equally good at your game, so you need to somehow reconcile the difference. So the traditional way of doing that is saying, hey, do you want this game to be easy, medium, or hard? Let them judge for themselves how good they are at the game before they start. Some games will adjust that as you go through the game. I think Wolfenstein does that, which is cool too, I guess. And then there's retroactive skill gap reconciliation, where after you're done playing a level, it'll give you like a number of stars, and then if you're satisfied with how bad you did, you can move on. Otherwise play again until you get 3. And Angry Birds does that. There's a bunch of other games too that do it, but and then rubber banding. So for multiplayer games, if you want to maintain flow in a multiplayer game where people are going to be, if one person's going to be much better than someone else, you need to use kind of a rubber banding system. So like in Mario Kart, when you're like in last place, they'll give you blue shells and lightning so you can catch up to everybody. That's the idea there. If you're playing like a linear story game, cutscenes are pretty popular. That's kind of a way of bringing everyone back to the singular experience by just saying, hey, here's a film to watch, instead of like doing it through gameplay. And then the last thing is emergence prevention. Emergence is the idea of gameplay dynamics coming together to create something that the developer didn't expect to see. And really the only way to figure that out is by testing your game a lot. So an example of that in my game is I had a boomerang spell that you could throw, and if you hit somebody with it, it would split into 2 boomerangs, and then those would split into 2 if they hit somebody. And then I also had a vacuum ability that if you hit someone with it, it would create a vacuum around them that would pull spells in. So what would happen is if you'd hit someone with that and then use the boomerang, it would like knock them way out into the lava, and then they would like instantly die. And then 20 boomerangs would come flying back to you because it duplicated so many times and just kept pulling them in. So like that's an example of emergence where that shouldn't happen in your game because that's really imbalanced. So the only way I discover that is by playing and then being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I need to change that. Okay, this goes hand in hand with a singular experience. People like to win, right? Okay, Sid Meier says, no one complains about winning too much. I'm getting to supplement that by saying people do complain about a game being too easy. So people don't complain that they win too much, but they will complain that it's too easy. So in single player games, it's largely up to the designer how easy they want to make it, how often they want the player to feel like they're winning. And then a PvP game is probably your worst odds if it's like a free-for-all type of game. So if you have a 4-player game, only 1 person out of 4 wins, so 3 out of 4 people are upset, potentially. And then if you have a player versus environment game, you either all lose or you all win, which isn't all bad because if you all lose, you can at least commiserate with each other. And then I've read that two-team PvPs are kind of the optimal form of winning percentage because it's always 50-50. And it's kind of the best compromise for flow and winning percentage because 2 teams matched against each other evenly are gonna create the best version of flow that you can have but then still have a 50% winning chance. So that's why you kind of see the most popular games out there now are like Overwatch is really popular, League of Legends, pretty much any kind of MOBA is hugely popular, and I think that's in part to the fact that you get that flow and you get the highest winning percent. Okay, I'm going to go over some game design techniques real quick. So maximizing good emotion. It's kind of about identifying the points in your game that people enjoy the most and then making them that much better. So the idea here, and I put good in quotes because as an example, Overwatch, when you play a ranked game and you win, they show the counter, and it you watch it go up. You watch your rank go up basically. And I think you were telling me this. They used to have it so when you lost, it would show your rank go down the same way, and people did not like that. So now when you lose, it just goes and it just shows you what your new rank is, and that's it. It doesn't want to play it up at all because you're trying to maximize the good emotion in your game. Okay, so positive and negative feedback. This is the idea that positive feedback is if you're doing well in a game, the game rewards you by allowing you to do even better. And positive feedback can usually lead to really imbalanced games. Think of an example. This isn't a game example, but if you're training your dog or something like that, and you give him, he goes out to pee, and you're like, all right, good job, here's a treat. Next time he goes out there, he's a little more excited about going pee, and pretty soon he's just, he's trained. That's an example of positive feedback, but that's a good example of positive feedback. In games, for the most part, positive feedback tends, like I said, to make a game imbalanced. Negative feedback does the opposite. It's the idea that when someone does something good or someone's winning, you put some countermeasure in the game that kind of closes the gap. And I mean, rubber banding, like we talked about earlier, is an example of negative feedback. Okay, information hiding. This is the idea that one player will know what they have, but no one else does. So any card game that has a hand, like Magic the Gathering or anything like that, or the Wii U had huge potential for this because every player could have their own screen. I don't know if any of you guys had the GameCube with Game Boy Advance plugins. You know, I like, have you ever played Four Swords or Crystal Chronicles? Anybody playing those games? Yeah, okay. So you would, I remember in Crystal Chronicles they would give you an objective on your personal Game Boy and say, hey, do this, and then we'll give you something cool. And so the whole time you're trying to do a thing that no one else knows about, and it actually creates a kind of a rift between you and the other players. So with my brothers, we got to the point where we would just like tell each other what our objectives were so we could try to do as many of them as we could as a team. But anyway, so that's information hiding. Risk reward, the easiest example of this is gambling. You decide to put, let's say, a quarter in a machine for the chance of getting back $5 or nothing, okay? It's the idea that you take a risk and it can pay off in a big way or it could hurt you, right? In games, that's a very powerful emotion, like it's a very powerful emotional tool to use. In my game, an example of that would be, there's melee attacks you can use as a wizard, but if you miss, your guy falls on the ground for a couple seconds. So if you hit somebody, it's great because it's a nice close combat attack and they do pretty good damage. But if you miss, you're vulnerable for some hit. So that's an example there. And then skill versus chance. This goes back to the earlier slide about competitive play versus what was the other one? Chance-based play. You got to kind of find a happy medium between chess and war. War is terrible because you're just flipping cards over. You might as well be a robot. And chess is a great game, but if you ever play against someone who knows chess really well, it's not going to be fun for you because they're going to win every time. All right, sorry for the giant wall of text, but so targeting specific emotions, you have guilt is a good one you can create, and that's if you allow the player to take care of something and then you let it die. Like you give them the ability to let that thing die. They'll experience guilt for doing that. I don't know what kind of masochist wants to make a game that gives people guilt, but they're out there. There's some games out there that do that. And then you have pride. Good examples of that would be building games where you can, Minecraft is a game where you'll go show your friends and be like, dude, look at this thing I made. Like that's the exemplary of pride. In weakness, you don't really want to target that emotion, and as I talked about earlier, the rank dropping, the animation for rank dropping is a good example of maximizing weakness for a player when they watch it. Mastery, I think the best cases of mastery are games that actually your progress is essentially saved by you just being better at the game. So like Rocket League is a really great example of a game where there's not really any progression, but it's all you, like you are the progression in the game. And it's amazing how much, like how slowly it happens too. Like there's so much, you can just keep getting better at that game and it takes forever. Another example of that is The Witness, where you start out and they show you these cryptic puzzles and you're like, I don't know what that means. And then you finally find an area where they show you the most basic version of that puzzle, and then you just keep trying it until it works. And you're like, okay, so I think it's because I did this. And then you do the next one and you test that assumption. And then it slowly ramps you up to understanding what the different puzzles mean. And I think that, if you went back and played the game, it wouldn't be fun the second time because you already know what all the symbols mean. But that's a really great example of a game that saves its progress and makes you feel like you're mastering something. Anticipation. To maximize this, you kind of just drag out the amount of time it takes for something to happen that someone is looking forward to. So Zelda is a great example of that. When you open a treasure chest, they kind of play that da, 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 music, and you're like, he reaches in, and you're like, what did I get? Take it out. And then another good example of that would be if anyone's played Diablo 3. Sometimes they give you like super rare items, but they don't tell you what it is. It's like an item that says, hey, you need to open this thing. And you're like, oh man, I gotta open this. And then you get real excited, and then you hold down A, and it goes, you're like, okay, sweet, I got that. So like that's a really great example of maximizing anticipation. Longing, introduce items, abilities, or even people early in the game, and then bar access to the thing that you showed them. So like in Mega Man at the very beginning, you fight this bad guy, right? And then Zero, is that who shows up? I don't know, whoever's played it. So some dude shows up and like crushes him, and you're like, where did he get all those sweet abilities? And you're like, I want those abilities. And then so you spend the rest of the game, you want to go fight that guy again, and you want to get those abilities to do it. Another example would be like Wind Waker or Super Mario Brothers, where they take away like your sister in Wind Waker or the princess, and you're like, I gotta go get the princess back. Although I would say that technique is under pretty heavy scrutiny, especially, yeah, whatever. You guys know what I'm saying. Okay, and then what else we got? Camaraderie. Great examples of that. Rocket League, or pretty much any sports games, but the most fun I've had with or the most I've experienced camaraderie is Rocket League. Really, any game that makes you high five the person next to you when something happens is a pretty good indicator of camaraderie. Trine 2, has anybody played that? Yeah.
Just be the wizard.
Yeah, the wizard. Yeah. So I think good games that do camaraderie well tend to give different roles to different people, so that only certain people can do certain things in the game, and that creates kind of more of a like you depend on each other because you just can't do the thing that you need to do, and you have to depend on someone else to do it. And then rivalry. Easy example of that is Smash Brothers. I don't think I need to explain that one anymore. Okay. I made a demo game. It's dead simple. So I need 4 volunteers to play. Who wants to play? Yeah.
So you got to be way back here.
Yeah.
I'll try.
All right. You go. One person. All right. Okay, so the mechanics in this game are real simple. Basically, you each control a square, and you are trying to jump on each other. It's pretty straightforward. If you jump on someone else, they disappear, and then they can't play anymore until there's one person left. Okay. So
straight up, get wrecked.
yeah, you can do that if you want.
Just kidding.
Okay. Maximize on play. That was already active. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so you just move around until you know. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay, so that game was terrible, right? They added a smoke plume, which is another example of an aesthetic. Didn't change the game, just made it prettier. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so obstacles, obviously. Oh no! Oh.
That was luck.
All right. So obstacles as an example of a mechanic, kind of. I mean, it's really just the level. And then I'm gonna add. Okay, so here's an example of maximizing emotion. The best part of the game right now is taking someone out, right? So let's make it look better. Okay, now, so that looked cool, but how can we make that even better? If you picture like your how you're reacting to the game over time, it would look kind of like a graph with a spike on it, right? Like, oh, that was cool. So what if you stretch the spike out a little bit?
over.
Yeah, it was. Okay. So yeah, that's an example of maximizing emotion by spreading it out over time. Okay. We talked about positive feedback earlier. I'm going to give an example of that in this game. Slow death, yeah.
Oh, what's going on? No, how do I get? Oh, it's like
There you go.
a negative. Just
So what happens is when you kill someone, the other two people get weak sides on all sides for 3 seconds. So that's positive feedback, because if you kill one person, you have the opportunity to just run through everybody else and take them out. It's not really fair, but it kind of makes the game like you could get a triple combo, and it's kind of cool, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna change that again. This time, instead of positive feedback, we're gonna do negative feedback.
You kill somebody, you become vulnerable.
Everybody lost.
I think the best part is everybody who's playing.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave it that way, and then we're gonna add some information hiding. So this one will be interesting. So I'm gonna have to tell you what it is before it goes, or it's not gonna make any sense. Okay, so with this mode, when the game starts up, your controller will vibrate a certain number of times, and that is your target. So if it vibrates 4 times, you have to kill 4. If you kill 4, everyone else explodes. So you got to pay attention to your controller vibrations. So I take it nobody got their target.
I did.
Did you?
Yeah, my target was 1.
But there was the last one. It was the last
the last
one.
one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's try it again.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, you got your target, and then it killed the other guy.
Oh. That doesn't make no sense.
My target killed me.
All right, we'll do one more since I want to see all 3 people get killed in one hit. Ah, there we go. Okay, so that's an example of information hiding. It's hard to do on a controller that has no screen on it. So you have to rely on either vibration, or actually those ones can produce a sound. I don't know how to do that with through PC, but they could have a sound, or the color of the light on the back, you could try to hide it, or there's some games where they rely on you pressing a specific button, but you know what button it is. Mario Party does that pretty well. I thought about actually.
How are you running these? There's no
Bluetooth.
PlayStation. Oh, Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
So I
those
can
all.
take my PlayStation 4s and.
Yeah, if you hold down the share button and the PlayStation button at the same time for like 5 seconds, it'll start flashing on the top, like really
Okay.
quick flashes, and then you can pair it with your computer.
Nice.
Yeah. And then if you want to shut it off, hold the PlayStation button for 10 seconds.
No
Other-
special drivers now required.
Yeah, just works. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Yeah, my other idea for information hiding was going to be you could set either circle, square, or triangle as your hidden, like whatever your block is, and it'd be like a rock, scissors, paper type deal, where if you jumped on somebody else, it would show both buttons that were pressed currently, and then if you beat them in rock, scissors, paper, they would explode. If they beat you, you would explode, and if it was a tie, the person who jumped on the other person, or the person who got jumped on, would explode. So the tie goes to the jumper. That's what I was going to do originally, but I went with vibration instead. And then I was going to do something with risk reward, but I never did. I I kind of think just jumping is its own risk reward in this game. You could hide in the corner and not risk anything, and your reward is that you don't die probably. But with the addition of the information hiding, it's kind of dumb to hide in the corner at the beginning, because if somebody gets their target right off the bat, you're dead anyway. So that's a good way to prevent that loophole. So that's the demo. All right. So I was gonna replace all the graphics in that game with this turtle my brother made for me for that purpose, and we were gonna call it Turtle Tussle. And the idea would be you try to jump on someone else's underside as the turtle to blow them up or whatever. It's the same exact game, different aesthetic. Okay. All right, this is, I think, my last slide. Properly drawing inspiration for your games. If any of you guys have ever been on the subreddit for game ideas, it's really bad. There's a lot of really bad ideas out there. And it's because people don't know how to present their idea properly. I've seen one say, oh, it's Assassin's Creed mixed with Call of Duty, and you're like, okay, so you just picked two things that you like playing and you said mix them together. Like, you're not giving me any mechanics to go off of. That doesn't help. So when you're pulling inspiration, you can get it from anything. Some game design books say don't use games as inspiration, but if there's a mechanic you like in a game, there's no reason you can't steal it and use it in your own game. Just try to make it original and at least vary up what the aesthetic is behind the game. I mean, you can be playing the exact same game under the hood, but just make it look different at least. But definitely don't draw all your inspiration from other games. You know, draw inspiration from the world around you, different fields of study, things like that. So basically, when you're trying to figure out, I pretty much covered this already, difference between mechanics and aesthetics. Yeah, you can theme the game however you want. Make sure the core mechanics of your game are that you're true to those, and just make sure that your aesthetics are at least coherent to your game. And that's it. You guys have any questions? Oh, you can clap. That's
okay.
Liked it?
Thank you.
How long did you work on your the box game for?
Okay, so I gave some of this presentation I've given to students several different times. So the stuff that I sounded way more prepared for, it's because I've done it before, and the other stuff was me scrambling to make it not a kid's presentation. But to answer your question, I think the original game I spent probably 2.5 hours on, just getting it going, and then today I spent about an hour in that back room adding the positive feedback, the negative feedback, the information hiding, and the slow motion death. I added all those. So yeah, the slow motion death. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I've seen that in some other games, and it always like, that's a good idea. I should do that. So.
How did you achieve that? Is that just like messing with the time period or the?
Yeah. So timescale in Unity, if you mess with that, and then I used there's a Unity asset that I bought called DoTween. Yeah, DoTween, where it allows you can say change this thing's like exposition to something. You know what it is, but yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Please explain.
Okay. You basically tween something, and you can do it in one call. So you can say move this object from here to here over 2 seconds with this easing, but you only have to say that once. You don't have to. Normally, if you want to move something from here to here and make it look fluid, you have to set up like a timer, and then you have to do like arithmetic on it and say, when the time is this, it should be. You run like a formula on it with your easing. But this way, you just do it in one call, and it looks fancy schmancy. And I bought it for doing like dynamic menus where this thing needs to be here, but I don't know where here is. So using the Unity animator doesn't make sense because here could be over here, you know. So anyway, long story short, I used that on the time scale, and then I did a callback. So I had it tween to like 0.2 for so it slows it down a lot, and then I had a callback at the end of that tweened it back. But the funny thing is, when you're tweening the time scale, it messes with the amount of time it takes to do it because the time scale is down. So I had to make the values a lot shorter because it would tween and slow down the time, and then as the time that's supposed to trigger it to come back is a lot slower, if that makes sense. So like I did it the first time I did it, I was like, why is this taking 10 seconds? I only even want it to be 1 second. And I was like, oh, right, messing with the time scale. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, timeception. So yeah, that's how I did that. Yeah.
In putting together this presentation in your box game, did you draw any things that you want to bring in the mage code?
Did I think of anything that I wanted to put in?
Yeah. What's that out?
That's a good question. The time scale thing, I think that would be cool for when a wizard dies. Right now it's screen shake, chromatic aberration, it's wizard explodes, leaves a splat on the ground, there's particle effects. It's already like pretty over the top, but could always add some time scale to it.
I want to add some time scale, so check out the forums.
Yeah, that one's pretty cool. I've been considering buying that, if only for using it for replays. I think that'd be pretty sweet.
I just picked that up last week, actually.
Is it sweet?
It's awesome.
Really? How much was it? $30?
I think they had it on sale.
Oh, no, I don't think they had it on sale. I would have got a notification.
No, yeah, it was like 35 or 40.
35, okay. I think
for what it does.
I think that's regular price. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, timescale, I don't think anything else in there. It's kind of nice to take a simple game and try to think of like a really simple example of like what positive feedback and negative feedback is without spending a bunch of time coding it. It's kind of fun. Any other questions?
Where do you teach at?
So I did a few. City High is where I did. I think I had 2 of them there. So City High Middle School. That did 7th grade and 9th grade were the 2 age groups that did it, and it was interesting to see the dichotomy in girls in 9th grade, how interested they were in game design, and then girls in 7th grade. The ones in 7th grade were infinitely more interested. There's something that happens between 7th and 9th grade where girls lose interest in anything other than upkeep, I think. But yeah, so that was interesting. So I did that, and then we had Thornapple Kellogg come into OST.
Okay.
They actually have like a computer science program there, or like a few classes there that they teach in high school, which I think those should be taught everywhere, but I was really surprised that someone had actually gotten to the point where that was in schools. So their computer science group came here, so those kids were already like this interested in the stuff that I was talking about, so I got to like get into it more with them, which is cool. And then I talked at there's a Mosaic Film Festival. I don't remember what school went to that, but that's why there was a pretty heavy leaning towards film at the beginning. It's because I talked about that there, and I was like, that's actually a good point to bring into just game design in general. So.
All right. Are you still having schools come in here to do this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Game design?
I usually talk about game design when schools come in, and
Okay.
that's usually what I do. But on the 14th, I think it's the 14th, I'm going back up to City High to talk to some more kids about it. It's probably going to be the same kids I talked to last time, and they're going to be like, I thought you were going to tell us something new. But it should be fun. Are you asking because you have
I'm just asking for other schools that may not know about OST and.
Oh, okay, yeah. Are you like
Well,
you
I'm
have
at
connections?
Montcalm Community College right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but I know plenty of younger guys that.
That would be interested in this stuff.
Interested in game design.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, definitely. Cool. It's funny you should say that. Montcalm is actually hiring OST for like a marketing page.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm actually the guy that's going to be doing the CMS implementation. That's kind of interesting.
So then you're working with Rod then? Or?
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Small world.
Yeah.
Is it hands-on for the students or more lecture?
Pretty much what you guys just saw, and then I usually end with a demo of my game, so they all get to play it,
Oh.
and they get pretty excited about that because they get to play a video game while they're supposed to be in school. Gets them excited about programming at the very least.
Did you use the exact same game?
I made that game originally for kids,
Okay.
yeah, but you guys got to see it with the extra, with the slow death, the positive and negative feedback and the information hiding, which I didn't have before. I just talked about it with them. I was like, I didn't have before. I just talked about it with them. I was like, I could have done this, but I didn't have enough time. So. Yeah.
It's actually, it ends up being decent even for
Yeah, it's an alright game. I mean, I wouldn't play it, but
It's got your simple Smash Brothers feeling to it, or you could play it with kids too if you wanted to.
yeah, actually, when I demoed it for the 7th graders, one kid was like, "Can I have this game? I want to go home and play it." I'm like, "Stop it! You don't want to play this game. It's not good." Yeah, it's like this is the most dead simple game in the world. You don't want to play this.
You don't know some kids.
Yeah.
Apparently you've never seen Minecraft.
Yeah.
That my grandson is just, that's it. That's all he wants to play when he comes over to Minecraft.
Yeah. That game is.
But he goes in and gets other stuff and brings it in,
Uh-huh.
and gets Lego stuff and starts playing that. But so
Okay.
he gets his own stuff, so can't really complain too much because he is using his brain to get
Oh, yeah.
other stuff to
Right.
bring into the game. So.
Right. Yeah. You can. Yeah. People I think parents who don't want their kids playing Minecraft are not understanding what the game actually is.
My son playing Disney Infinity, he'll spend 2 hours straight just going down, picking up the little characters, climbing up the flight of stairs, and kicking them off the balcony. He will
So
do
he's a
that.
griefer, is what you're saying.
No, he just likes to kick the little characters. I don't know why. He doesn't generally go play the actual game. He just sits around and runs around and shoots stuff and throws stuff.
All right. That's fun. You guys got any other questions?
I
Yeah.
did notice that when we started playing that, started listening to the crowd just a little bit, paying attention. And as you were presenting a lot more different stuff,
It got louder.
the crowd, and everybody started getting more into the
Uh-huh.
game,
Yeah.
which is pretty much what you're trying to achieve in
Right.
the overall
Yeah.
game.
That's what I was trying to exemplify. I intentionally turned the sound off at the beginning, so it's like your character dies and it's like they're just gone. And, it doesn't excite you at all. It's like, okay, I jumped on that guy. He's just not there anymore. But when you make him explode into pieces and there's sounds and it slows down, and there's like an element of strategy to it, people get a little more excited about it because there's some challenge there.
Should add a second level of sound. That the first one is just like your Pong.
Well,
The
the
point-
8-bit sounds I used, you mean?
Was that?
Yeah, they were 8-bit.
Oh, I just literally meant the boop where the ball is bouncing off in Pong.
Oh.
That's when they land on them. Just
Yeah.
that, and then you jump it up to the.
Yeah, the sounds in here were pretty much just as bad. I mean, the music was good
Were
8-bit
there
music.
collision
but
sounds or just the
There was
sound
there
in
was
the
collision
background?
sounds. Yeah, I made them pretty subtle because they get annoying otherwise.
Were there jump sounds too?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, just your standard Mario 8-bit jump sound.
I didn't notice, like, when your character died, why did the controller too?
No, they didn't. I didn't add that. I only added vibration for the sake of the information hiding. I actually had to switch controller libraries just to get the vibration working.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I used to use what is it called? In Control. I used to use In Control for all my for my controller library, and then I switched to Rewired because Rewired takes like a player-centric approach over top of a controller-centric approach. Basically means if someone's controller dies, the game locks up when you're using In Control. At least, you've probably seen that happen a couple times. Like if the batteries come loose,
That's what happens in Mage.
that's what was happening. Someone's controller disconnected, and then the game didn't know what to do, and all the wizards would just walk in the direction they were walking until I had shut the game off.
I remember that.
Yeah, so that's what was happening. I switched libraries, and that won't happen now. Like you can disconnect the controller, reconnect it, and it will automatically reassign it to that player, which is sweet. So that was one reason I did it. Also, it supports GameCube controllers now. With the I have a Mayflash adapter, so you can plug 4 GameCube controllers into that, and then use 1 USB port.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, so like I'm trying to target people who have Wii U's and play Smash Brothers because they'll already have probably 8 controllers, or they'll know people that will come over and bring controllers, and then you can plug all those into your PC, and they'll work. So those 2 reasons, and then vibration just worked out of the box when I switched over to it, so that's why I did that with this one.
Yeah, what's it like in Unity to go like I don't know, to build for other platforms, is there a lot involved with that? or
No.
like-
Not really. Well, the hardest part I would say is getting.
Clicking the button.
Yeah, clicking the button is hard. I'd say, as I find my cursor, you literally just go over here, to build settings, and you select your target. And there's a bunch of them in there. Some of these require a specific license to be able to build for. So, like for example, I haven't tried it yet, but supposedly Xbox One you can build to, but you need to have an Xbox One developer account, which means you have to have like an LLC to register under, so that you can give them your EIN, like your tax ID for that entity, and then they'll let you. Supposedly, once you get that, then you can build for it. And I've heard that the Xbox One is actually a dev kit, like it's built in, so you don't have to go get a dev kit. That's what I've heard. So Xbox One is going to be, I mean, after Steam, it'll be the first thing I target for Mage Quit.
I think I was the one that told you because they just announced it.
Oh yeah, they had been talking about it for a long time,
Right,
but they
just
finally.
announced it and put it up. You
Yeah.
have to sign up for the Windows Fast Track or whatever to get
Okay.
the new stuff.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. I mean, mostly because I still don't have my LLC application back.
See, I didn't see anything about needing it when I was looking at it, but that was.
Yeah, I also heard that you probably told me that too.
Did you mail it in or did you do it online?
I mailed it in.
Oh, you should have done online.
You can do it. Is it
Yeah.
still only $50 if you do it online? Or are you thinking like LegalZoom or something?
No, you go to the state's website. You can apply for EIN. You can apply for
Really?
everything. It costs $100 though.
Oh, 100. I only paid 50.
Wow, that's.
You're paying for
You only paid
something.
50?
You did it online too?
75 because we were certain an alias, but
You did it online?
Yeah, and it's instantaneous.
Man, I should have checked that. Oh well. I have till the end of the year anyway.
There's Brett's tag. I should have checked this.
Yeah.
Should have checked it online. Yeah. Oh well.
No longer claim all your expenses. It's a
So
loss.
anyway, I've been talking about this game that I haven't showed you guys yet, so I'm just going to show you the Greenlight trailer.